the West, Europe, and even here parts of the United States are becoming more and more populated by very active and sometimes even radical Islam. And that represents a shift in the tide that's actually problematic, the Islamization of the West. You and I need to talk about this. Now, I want to begin this video by cautioning very carefully that we're not actually saying just because you profess the faith of Islam, therefore that person is whatever the label you want to throw at them. In fact, what I am saying is that there is a foundational reality to the worldview that created the affluence, development, and the liberty of the West. That worldview is natural law, and built upon that foundation is the Judeo-Christian worldview. What we are seeing in the Islamization of the West is more than a demographic trend. It's a civilizational challenge, and it has deep consequences because the process of this continued Islamization is the displacement of exactly what I just told you, Judeo-Christian foundations within Western civilization, within Western societies, and therefore, eventually, the attempt to replace constitutional liberties with Sharia-based demands. And before you say, well, Marcus, you're crying wolf. No. Wherever we have seen large swaths of the Islamic community congregate in high enough concentrations, eventually some enactment of Sharia tends to take form. As someone who grew up in a nation that had a fully functioning Sharia government, I can tell you firsthand that the Sharia system of law runs contradictory to British civil law, and it runs completely contradictory to the entire heritage of Western civilization, and therefore the Judeo-Christian worldview of canon law and the rights of the human person and any form of civil law that flows from that reality. And so what we're seeing here is the denigration of what is otherwise a sustained Western civilization.
Why do people, Muslims, want to come here and introduce Sharia law into Britain when it's not our default? We're a Christian country by default. Why don't they just move to other countries?
Because if you look at where people move around in the world, they move into Western countries because our broad liberalism, our legal system, the kind of societies that we build are conducive to a good life.
But they don't like liberalism, do they? They want to introduce medieval Sharia law.
What they want to do is a hybrid. They want a hybrid. That's what they do. But we, as Westerners in a Western country with Western laws, should be rejecting a hybrid.
Islamization, when I talk about it, is referring to demographic shifts that are resulting in political lobbying and lawfare, religious and cultural pressure, parallel societies and enclaves, and censorship by means of accusation of Islamophobia. We are seeing a demographic change. Pew Research indicates that Muslims will make up 14% of Europe's population by 2050. A much higher percentage is seen in countries like France, Sweden, and the UK. And in some districts in France, Muslims already comprise over 50% of that population. So this is in the Saint-Denis. And the point I'm trying to stress here is that these populations tend to have higher birth rates than the native populations. We're actually seeing a native population decline here in the West. Meanwhile, Islamic populations tend to be increasing at higher rates, and birth rates tend to be one of the reasons why. And so Europe is experiencing the negative results of these birth rates. And Arnold Toynbee, he wrote this: you cannot defeat a civilization from the outside unless it is spiritually exhausted. And I want to put a pin on that because I'll get back to this at the end of this video. We are seeing parallel legal systems get established as well. Sharia courts are in operation in Britain because Muslim communities have settled family and civil disputes under Islamic law. And this discriminates against women because the rights of women in Sharia law actually stand contradictory to just general Western standards and therefore British legal standards.
We're inside one of Britain's Sharia courts. Our camera's on a rare tour tonight.
This is where the scholars would normally sit and have our consultation meeting with the husband and wife sat on each side.
It looks like a courtroom, surrounded by law books, legal files, one side versus another. A panel presides. Marital disputes, the most common type of case.
The blasphemy laws via the back door. We're looking at France. Teacher Samuel Paty was beheaded in 2020 after showing a Charlie Hebdo cartoon in a lesson on free speech. Canada and UK, arrests for Islamophobic speech have increased, sometimes for quoting facts about Islamic texts. Ayaan Hirsi Ali, he's a former Muslim and now he's a human rights activist. He wrote this, he said this: the moment you declare a set of ideas to be beyond criticism, satire, or scrutiny, freedom dies. And this is the recognition of how Islamic law tends to operate. This is just a very rational inquiry into the problem. Secularism tends to bow to Islam. Secularism also mocks Christianity. So Christian symbols, crosses, nativity scenes, they're banned in schools and public spaces. Praying in your mind is a thought crime. Meanwhile, Muslim prayer rooms, halal accommodations are made ubiquitous and available wherever the concentration of the demographic tends to increase, even in secular institutions. And so the double standard is laughable, to say the least. In Germany, for example, some public schools have actually outright cancelled Christian holidays, but also banned pork in cafeterias to avoid offending Muslims. And the attacks are increasing. In France, over 800 churches were desecrated in 2019 alone. Arson attacks, graffiti, defecation in holy places, and a lot of these go unreported, mind you. In Sweden, Christian converts from Islam are persecuted in migrant communities. Some churches now actually require police protection because of it. So what are we seeing? We are seeing also a rise in anti-Semitism. And we're also seeing a rise in violence. In France, over 50% of anti-Semitic attacks are committed by Muslim youth, despite Muslims being less than 10% of the population. In Germany, Jewish students are advised not to wear the yarmulke in some cities because of Islamic aggression. Chief Rabbi Jonathan Sachs wrote this: when Jews leave, it is a sign that the civilization is falling. Now, you can put caveats to that statement, but the fact remains that Judeo-Christian heritage suffers when it is challenged from a violent perspective. Islam is not merely a religion. We need to understand this. The Quran actually calls for a totalizing theocratic system, but not just the Quran, the Hadith, which are the statements of Muhammad. Sharia regulate politics and war, taxation and property, punishments, women's roles, and even their dressing, and rules for non-Muslims, the dhimmis, the people who are not Muslims. And all of this is to say that America is not immune, the West is not immune. If you want to see a revival and a reclamation, but also a continued preservation of the principles of liberty and human flourishing and the common good, free market principles, and therefore the reality of upward social mobility, the rights of male and female equal in dignity, then we have to return to the Judeo-Christian worldview. We have to return to natural law. I want to warn us, based on what Benedict XVI said in his Regensburg lecture, a culture that has no absolute truths is incapable of withstanding an ideological conquest. I am warning us right now. That's what we are seeing. Lest we fall short, lest we not see it, I'm warning us right now that if we don't rise up to this and re-Christianize our societies, we will become victims to totalitizing regimes. So let's be careful, and let's continue to fight for the heritage that created affluence and flourishing in liberty and civilization in the West as we know it. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm Marcus Peter.